really lovely scenes of beautiful Wigtown there. I wish we could be together in person, but we're not. We're online, and we're going to make this evening really, really lovely anyway. Welcome to Writing in the Time of COVID, and part of the Writers Gathering events here at Wigtown this weekend. My name's Jan Carson, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so, and I'm going to chip in as well with some thoughts. I'm dead excited because I have got two wonderful writers who are going to share the space with me this evening. I'm going to introduce them first of all, and then we'll get to meet them in person. First up, we have Jared McGinnis. Jared is co-founder of The Special Relationship, which was chosen for the British Council's International Literary Showcase. His short fiction has been commissioned for BBC Radio 4 and appeared in respected journals in the UK, Canada, America, and Ireland. He also has a PhD in artificial intelligence, and his first debut novel, The Coward, a work of autofiction, is published by Canongate in July of this year, and I've been lucky enough to read a proof, and I can advocate that it is a stonking good read, so hopefully he'll get to tell us a little bit about that tonight. My second lovely guest is Saeida Rouass. Saeida is a British-Moroccan author from London. She's the author of 18 Days of Spring and Winter, which is set in Cairo during the Arab Spring, and historical crime novel Assembly of the Dead, which is set in Marrakesh in 1906. She was one of the commissioned artists for the Arab British Centre's Theatre of the East project and is a 2019 Churchill Fellow, with her work exploring misogyny and white supremacy in the USA. She's currently working on the sequel to Assembly of the Dead, and she'll maybe tell us a little bit about that this evening. My name is Jan Carson. I am a Northern Irish writer based here in East Belfast. I've just published my 6th book, a set of short stories called The Last Resort, which are set in a caravan park in the rainy north coast of Northern Ireland. And I'm dreadfully uncomfortable saying things that I've won, so I'm just going to pass over that and bring our guests back in again. So there they are, as if by magic. It's lovely to see you both.
Hey there.
Kick off maybe with a wee question just to give us some context for the conversation tonight. How has the last 18 months or so, I guess we're 18 months now, how has it been for you? Where have you been? What has been the context of your lockdown experience? And we'll maybe start with Saeida, if that's okay.
Sure. Hello, Jan. Thank you for that introduction. For me, it's just been mostly in London until recently that I moved to Cambridgeshire, because London started feeling very claustrophobic in lockdown, more so than without the kind of space. And I think it's been very similar to lots of other people, where there's been really good moments and quite challenging moments, and just a mixed bag of experiences, really. So that's the kind of context of navigating a kind of world that is unknown, really, and just, gearing myself up for that and the unexpected.
Yeah, definitely the unexpected. I think the unexpected has become expected at this point.
Absolutely,
yeah. Jared, what about you? What's your lockdown been like?
Yeah, luckily my family and friends have all been relatively healthy, so it really has been just a sense of kind of anxiety and tedium, and it's just, and we moved out of London as well, but kind of the added thing is I became a British citizen in 2012. I was very excited about that, and then those privileges got thrown away, and so I was like, well, damn it, I want to take advantage of those as a British citizen, and so I moved to France. So we live in Marseille now. I have a family. And we said, if we're going to move, let's do it for real. And we're isolated from everyone. All our family is in America, so we don't have really family in the UK anyways. So it's like, well, if we're going to be locked down, let's be locked down and have an adventure. And that's basically what we did. So we moved in October, when you could move and do these kind of things. And that was like the one bit, like getting on an airplane for the first time in a long time. And the only time we've ever kind of been exposed, and that just really anxious. And then, we've just slowly been kind of settling in life here and embarrassing myself regularly with my abuse of, the French language. Thank God for our Norman overlords. That gives me a bit of a head start, but so that's where we're at.
And I guess you two have had a moving experience in the middle of your lockdown. I feel like I haven't moved in 18 months. I have been in a tiny terraced house in East Belfast by myself, and I think I clocked my 300th walk around the same pond the other day. So it's felt very tedious, very little bit like the walls are starting to come in for me. But also similarly, you know, to Jared, I'm very fortunate that, you know, my family have been fine. I'm healthy. I feel really grateful for all of that as well. And been able to keep working in different ways, which we'll talk about a little bit in a second. I've just realised I have dropped the ball on saying the one piece of information I was meant to say at the start, which was the chat function is open. And we would love to get your questions, which we'll gather up at the end of the session and pitch at the writers. The more intrusive and interrogating, the better, because writers really love to answer difficult questions on Friday night.
Yeah, that's true.
Whatever you can come up with. I guess
if it's too uncomfortable, I'll lie. So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, nobody knows whether we're telling the truth or not at this stage. I guess a question that we get asked quite a lot is, as writers is, you know, what does your normal day look like? What is routine for you? And that has kind of gone out the window in the last wee while. So I'm wondering, to start with, if you could maybe give me a wee contrast between, as a writer, how have things changed for you from 2019 to now? So what are the big differences between now and then? And I'll come to you first, Jared, for this one, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty good routine. I had, you know, that kind of discipline of like, you just get up and you get to work. And so my discipline was basically take the girls. Actually, so my wife would take the girls to school. That was the tradition. So like, and I would just get up and go to a coffee shop. When I was living in Bethnal Green, there's always great coffee shops. And I'm an American in a wheelchair, usually with two little blondes in my lap. So I became a kind of instant local celebrity. And so it was just like, that's what I do. I would just go and I would work until I kind of get exhausted till about lunchtime, and then head back. And it was a real good routine. And to me, that's really useful for writing, because it is kind of a coal face. You just have to just bang at a rock until something worthwhile comes out. And that was out the window. So what happened was basically, it was actually, again, like just very lucky. Like I'm just a very lucky guy. When lockdown happened, my wife works, so she travels a lot for work and stuff like that. And and it was actually, I was finishing the novel, The Coward. I was finishing the first kind of, you know, just kind of send it off to copy editing. And she got furloughed when it all happened. And so like, actually it worked out great, because we had a tiny flat in London. Two small children, so I cannot concentrate. I don't have that ability. Like if there's any I can't work from home, which is why like I would always go off into a coffee shop, because there's something about the home space that's very hard for me to work. And then she took the girls during her furlough, and then when she was unfurloughed, I had finished. So we switched. So I just didn't get anything done. And the piece I'm going to read is from that period of when, like, when we were, when I was back on baby duty, basically, and she was working. I just wouldn't get anything done. But I really kind of gave myself, like, we're too harsh on ourselves, especially you get on Twitter and everyone's like, oh, I've just finished my, 100th book this week and all this kind of thing. And you're like, tiny naked human. It wasn't a hallucination. That really did happen. Oh, the two now. Okay. Good night, girls. So you want to show your bits to Scotland? Okay, there you go. Hi, everybody. So say good night. Say good night, Scotland. Good night, Wigtown.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, guys. I'll see you later. I'm working. Good night. Give your mommy a kiss. So you just have to like. All right. See you later. Good night, kiddo. You ham. So, just give yourself being okay is a victory right now. That your family's all right, and not stress yourself out. And you got to live to be able to write. At least my writing, you need to live your life to be able to have the writing that's worth writing about. And so I just kind of gave myself permission, and I got done what I got done. There's lots of scraps everywhere, but like it's, you know, I finished one piece that I'm very happy with. And then of course, like going through all the kind of, you know, production process of The Coward. And I don't know, I'm okay with that. I'm in a really good place. And when I'm not in a good place, you kind of like, you do have those moments of freak out, but I think that's okay. So yeah, that's where I was at.
What about you, Saeida? Was it a different experience for you?
I think it was quite similar. Like I'm not as disciplined as waking up and starting straight away. And I work as well. So I have various like kind of professional projects like the Churchill Fellowship that require a lot of time, and other little projects. And my work was taking me to Morocco every 5 weeks, which was just great.
Oh.
I just get a break and I'm in the country, and it helps with the writing and kind of, you know, just knowing what's happening there. So I was always kind of juggling various things all the time and trying to just allocate time for different things, and doing things like changing my workspace and going to this cafe and then another cafe, and just trying to keep it kind of going and keep it, you know, kind of have some diversity in my day. And lockdown happened. I think I just found that I just like all that structure and just kind of just fell apart, and it was just very, very long days of I read excessively, and I found it difficult. I think I lost my capacity to concentrate on any particular thing for a very long time, and I was just able to look at what I was working on for a little bit, and then I'd have to move away from it and then try and go back to it. So I struggled a lot, I think, with the self-discipline, and that brought on anxiety. But again, for me, it was the same thing. It was just kind of accepting that this is what's happening and this is what I'm feeling, and not beating myself up about not being productive enough or not utilizing the opportunity the way that I should be, because there's just this open time. I think creativity comes from living, like you say, Jared. If your life radically changes, it's hard to feel inspired all the time. So I think it was quite a shift without, and I don't think I fully appreciated the impact of lockdown, like emotionally and creatively, until I was well into it. You know, I thought it was like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm just at home. I'm just kind of sitting around reading a book and watching some telly. But, you know, I think it does chip away like, different things. So I think for me, it was about finding things that I could do in lockdown and just feeling grateful that I was able to achieve those little creative tasks, and just be happy with that, and like kind of keep moving.
Yeah. Like, I think I'm going to text in one thing from each of you that just really sparked off when you said it. And, you know, Saeida saying that you were traveling to Morocco every 5 weeks. You know, my 2019 was crazy. I did 25 countries across the year. I think I spent 2/3 of the year on the road with book stuff. And to go from that to, like, you know, I haven't even been in a train station for 18 months, let alone hearing you talk about flying. Like, whoa, that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
So, in some ways, you know, when it hit, I had this wave of relief. Like, you know, I've been keeping up that pace of life for about 5 years now, and it just felt like a gift of like, you can't panic, you know, you can't go anywhere, you're stuck. So the first wee while I felt like just I get to rest, this is lovely. And then I started getting, you know, what you were talking about, Saeida, like, okay, ready to go again now. Could easily pack the suitcase and see somewhere a bit different. And those outside influences that you were talking about, Jared, of, you know, feeding your creativity with new things and new conversations. And I really missed that. And I think the other big thing, and both of you singers have talked about this, lovely, lovely coffee shops and writing in coffee shops. I mean, Belfast ones probably aren't quite as good as the ones in London, but I'm a coffee shop writer. I've never written creatively in my own house. I just
find it impossible.
Stimulating. Yeah. I'm not going to ask you to move your cameras around, but if I did, you could see like laundry and the dishes that we've done, and there's something lovely about going out of your workspace or your home space to a different space.
I'm totally, because for me it's like that. There's something about the domestic space is I'm a very distractible writer. I'm like pretty so, and the domestic space is exactly that. Whereas if I'm in a coffee shop, all I have is my coffee, and the only thing that can distract me is kind of the chit chat. But that's like grist for the mill. So like exactly, like I'll like, ooh, I'll steal that. Ooh, what are they? Like my favorite was always like Tinder first dates, like being near Tinder first dates, like just absorbing that kind of anxiety and tension. I was like, oh, I need that for my fiction. Yeah, that's great. I'll put that in there. So yeah.
No, all of that just feels gone, but hopefully coming back soon. Yeah. Saeida, I wanted to also pick up when you talked about reading there. I'm going to say, get me for this, but I am one of those obnoxious people that's like, here are the 100 books that I read this week. Reading was the only thing I could concentrate on. I couldn't concentrate on films or TV. Did your reading habits change? Did you read less? Did you read differently? Were you drawn to certain kinds of books? Saeida, you start, because you've thrown the ball out about reading.
I think I'm probably like every reader. I've got 80% of the books on my shelves are yet to be read. So I'm always buying books, and so I was kind of trying to make my way through them, and I always just read quite organically. Like I'll find a quote in one book and it will lead me to another and lead again and again. But I just read excessively. I think I always try and maintain reading anyway, but I was just going through books like at a speed that I don't think I've gone through since I was a teenager, like just because of time. And it literally was the only thing that had, like, I felt calm. I think it just gave me kind of calm, and maybe the ability, just being able to, like, I'm still in my room, but it allows me to escape from that environment and just live in a different world for 3 or 4 hours before coming back to it. And so I think that's why it was so soothing for me at the time. But there wasn't a particular genre that I was interested in or anything. I think I read loads of books about like mental health, just naturally, because I kind of picked one up and then it led me to another one, and then it led me to another one. And so I just found myself reading, like The Body Keeps the Score, and they were quite big. These were quite, really incredible books, but really high profile in like 2020, and just finding myself reading those kind of books. And they did help me make sense, I think, of the world, and definitely it kind of was a soothing part of it, I think, for me.
Yeah, I read loads more nonfiction than I normally read. Like, I don't know why, but I think maybe because I'm usually traveling and novels are easier to read on planes and trains and stuff. But, I went deep into lots of essay collections this year. And I guess the other thing that I read, which I am so glad I did, was I had started out at the beginning of 2020 because it was Agatha Christie's centenary to read all 66 of her crime novels in order.
Amazing.
And they were so comforting. Like, if any year needs a year of reading Agatha Christie,
I went for comfort reading, and I found myself. Like short fiction is like my first love, and I found the way I kind of deal with short fiction, kind of like as a kind of a poet of like just really kind of, and I found I just did not have the capacity to read short fiction the way I want to read short fiction. And I remember also like reading Shuggie Bain and like just being like, I gotta give this a break. This is too much, which is ironic considering, The Coward and how intense it is. And I was like, I need something lighter. And it was a lot of nonfiction, and it was a lot of comfort reads. And when I moved from London, I started reading Worcester and Jeeves and Sherlock Holmes. And it's just totally about like, I'm missing London. It wasn't conscious. It was one of the things of like, I'll read that. And it was comfort read. But I was like, oh no, it's because I miss the kind of things. And I've been reading Marseille books as well. I mean, that's just kind of, I like that sense of place and all that. But it was definitely comfort reads. And if anything was too kind of emotionally intense, I just couldn't deal with it. I just had too much emotional intensity as it was. And I didn't have the capacity for it. And like nonfiction. And I find like in anxious times, nonfiction is weirdly the most comforting, because you basically see that like this is how it's always been. Like, if you read about, the kind of revolutions of 1849 or whatever, you're just like, oh yeah, reactionary backlash. Oh yeah, okay, I see that. Yeah, all right. And that's that. I don't know, for some reason and the fall of the Roman Empire. I was reading some of those. Still haven't finished it, but like, it's amazing. I mean, and that helped. That's what I read, is a lot of nonfiction, a lot of history, and a lot of ancient history.
I mean, it is the one sort of positive. I mean, there's a few positives of the last year, I'm sure, but one of them seems to be people are reading again, which is good news for us, because the more people we read, the longer we get to stay in our jobs. So keep doing that, folks, if you're listening. Keep buying all the books. But I wanted to turn now to maybe thinking about writing in lockdown, and how it's, how the last strange period has impacted you as a writer and your output and your style and how you go about it. And I know all three of us have been writing away and on different projects during lockdown. So I thought we might pause, find out a little bit about what you've been working on during lockdown. And I think everybody's prepared a really short little reading just to give us an excerpt from that. So did you want to start and tell us, what did you write during lockdown? That sounds really accusatory, like how productive you've been.
Oh God, I think I like kind of chipped away at the sequel to Assembly of the Dead. I have definitely not got as far as I wanted with it, but like chipping away at it slowly. I wrote a couple of contributions to anthologies. I'm going to read a little bit from one of the anthologies now. And then I worked on, I've been working on a script with a writing partner who's based in the US. And I think that piece of work has been really kind of fundamental for me, because just realizing that a lot of the writing that I've done in lockdown has been more collaborative than the other type of writing, and that's the kind of writing that I've really enjoyed working on. Just with the editors of the anthologies and with my writing partner, it's just really helped to put some kind of structure into my writing and some kind of like weekly goal at least. And so I've been working on those three, and then in the background, chipping away at the novel, which feels like a bigger task than it did going into lockdown.
Yeah.
So just a kind of mixture of everything. But I think the thing that's changed most for me is just this idea of working collaboratively with other writers, and how fulfilling that's been. It's been so rewarding to be able to have conversations with somebody on Zoom and talk something through extensively, and then kind of chip away and get a page done with them, and then the next day get other just work your way through it slowly. It just feels like you've got a kind of you've just got a partnership going that is not related to anything else except your creativity, and that's been really great, actually.
Could you give us a wee snippet of what you've been working on? We'd love to hear.
So I'm going to read from We Wrote in Symbols, Love and Lust by Arab Women, which is edited by Salma Dabak, and was, I think it was published, it was just released like end of April. And I wrote a retelling of the story of Psyche and Cupid, which exists in one of, I think it's the oldest novel in Latin, called The Golden Arse. And I came to doing the research for the contribution, I realized that the writer of that novel was based in North Africa and was indigenous, Amazigh. And I just found it fascinating that he was a North African writing during the Roman Empire. And it's the story of Psyche and Cupid has fed into our myths so strongly across the world, but the fact that he was in that region has kind of been lost through that. And so I just wanted to reimagine that story a little bit. So I'll just read a very short paragraph of it for you. And it's called A Free Girl's Tale. Amazigh in northern Morocco is the indigenous people. So in North Africa, indigenous, and that the translation is free people. So this is called A Free Girl's Tale. As I look back on my life's trajectory, I see it as nothing more than the articulation of love as shown to us by the gods in both its beauty and most sullied form. Each unique form of love has revealed itself through my life. The gods have taken hold of my body and very being and made of it an eternal story. I am a woman possessed by the divine, immortal in my fate. My love is a manifestation of all loves. My life, nothing but an agent of the heavens, there to demonstrate to the people the violence that comes with passion. I could be bitter, like the citrus fruits that grow in these parts. Love can often leave a woman bitter, but I am not. My life has not been my own. I am merely a reflection of you, a myth to be deconstructed for the instruction of man. For I am not seen as being real, not made from flesh that quivers from a touch, blood that rushes from a kiss, or bones that open and fold in the convulsions of passion. And now I sit here eternal, a testimony to former selves, a statue to be marveled at, placed in a museum for others to view from intrusive angles, a tale to be pondered and retold, lessons of caution that cross time and space, a painting to be enjoyed, my moment of love and loss immortalized in its detail, a didactic metaphor. I am not and never have been myself.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to hear the rest of it now, but we're going to scoot on to Jared. Jared, can you tell us a wee bit about what you've been working on?
Yeah,
I do feel like a teacher saying this. Like, what have you got to show for your time, Jared?
Yeah, indeed. So because my first book was kind of looking at kind of non-fiction models of writing fiction, so I was kind of working towards, like, that's why there's been described as an autofiction work of autofiction. The kind of thing I've been working on is, okay, then let's do the reverse. How do I look at non-fiction and pull in the kind of narrative models of fiction? And so that's what I was working on. It was kind of to me, I saw these as kind of companion pieces and have these two books as an interaction to each other. I'm very fascinated about books that kind of exist beyond the kind of codex that binds them. And so I was kind of working on that, and it was very similar. It ended up being a collaborative project because I got ACE Arts Council funding to create a kind of art installation. So the other thing besides like writing on the page is I'm very interested in kind of live fiction and how do you take the live experience of literature, which is very different from when you're reading, like sitting in a corner and reading by yourself. How do you make that like a first class experience? And so I was collaborating with a photographer and a sound designer, Andy Sewell and Ed Prosser, and to create this kind of experience. And the idea was that, it was an art installation, but very much kind of with kind of storytelling at its heart. And in particular, I was interested in kind of modes of time, and because it just felt like we were in kind of a stasis, and memory is very keen and all that. And that's the kind of project, and we're just finishing it now, and we're kind of it'll be launched very soon. And so I'm going to read a piece from that. This particular piece is called "In Billions of Years, the Earth Will Be Swallowed by the Sun," and this is just an excerpt from it. It's somewhere down. It's kind of almost near the end, actually. It happened the other day. Poe, my daughter, was playing on a tree stump in St. Matthew's churchyard near our flat. This has been a favorite spot of ours during lockdown. There was rarely anyone there, and the occasional dog walker, jogger, or addict always kept their distance. The 18th century stone walls let Poe range without me worrying about traffic or kidnappings. The patterned trunks of the ancient and giant London plane trees, like castle towers, guard the perimeter of the yard, providing shade and sticks for us to build fairy forts. I'm a fan of the mild English summer and its autumn turning. I endure the gray, dark winters because it makes spring more of an event. Growing up near the Tropic of Cancer, the difference of length of day throughout the year is barely noticeable. Time was harder to measure there. Poe and I are watching a snail make its way across the lip of a stump. The undulations of its wet green leathery foot and tentacles are beautiful. Poe turns her body toward me, hands on my wheelchair, but her eyes are transfixed. She whimpers. She buries her face against my lap, but her gaze returns to the slow tap of its lower tentacles. I say, don't be afraid, and demonstrate by touching its eye stalk. It pauses, and the black spot of its eye pulls back into its body, then extends again. This draws her attention. She puts her own small hand out, finger extended, but turns away. Then she does it. She pokes a snail in the eye. She's excited and proud. She chitters about how she is a big girl and she is brave. It will be the first thing she tells her mom that night. She was meant to start reception in September, but COVID had made that uncertain. Primary school years have been a reoccurring topic for Poe. As the snail makes its deliberate but ponderous escape from our poking, she asks, What year are you in when you are 8? The twang of her Cockney and her accent makes me smile. Having not grown up in England, I have to do a little extra transcription to convert American elementary grades to British primary years. You'll be in year 3 or 4, I tell her. She picks up a stick to thwack the stump and says that she is 11. I inform her that at that age, she is in secondary school. She's impressed by this information. I ask her, what is it like being 11? For her, 11 means she can walk to school on her own and climb trees. You climb trees now, I suggest. She explains that 11-year-olds climb trees really high. Okay, I say. She wanders off, pretending to be an 11-year-old. With her stick, she measures the depth of an old foxhole in the southeast corner of the churchyard. London is quiet without its cars and people. Quiet except for the air ambulances that rush toward the Royal London. Sometimes there's a queue of red helicopters making circles over our flat. A man in his home office looks down at us, watching Poe and smiling.
Oh, I kind of got lost in that, Jared. I wanted to see, because it's very calming as well, the way you were reading it. Thank you so much for those.
No problem.
I guess I worked on a couple of different things during lockdown. I initially finished up a young adult novel, which was so terrible. I wish that I hadn't bothered on it. So I think I felt I needed to be really productive at the start, and I threw myself into a thing that I probably should have given up on. And then, it's interesting to hear both of you talking about collaborations. I also worked collaboratively on a couple of radio projects. So I wrote a 10-part series of linked monologues for Radio 4, which I'm going to read a little bit from one of those. And that was a joy of an experience. They just came really easily. I was writing about a caravan park up on the north coast of Northern Ireland. I obviously couldn't go there or travel to see it, so I was having to rely very heavily on my own memories of it from childhood. And I also had turned my dining room wall into a caravan park. So I had lots of friends who have kids who sent pictures of caravans, and I created Silver or Seacliff Caravan Park on my wall. So that was lovely. So that was a really great experience. And then latterly, I've been editing my next novel, which will be out in springtime of next year. And I have been working on a 10-part radio drama, it's a radio doc drama, so there's a documentary element to it alongside the drama stuff. So that's been collaboratively in a team, and that's been that thing that Saeida talked about of feeling like there were other people out there. It just felt lovely to not be by yourself in a room thinking and trying to come up with ideas. Even though it was online, it felt like there's more than one of me now, and I loved that. I'm going to read just 2 paragraphs from one of the caravan stories. The book is called The Last Resort. Or if you don't like to read at the minute, you can go onto the BBC Sounds website and listen to fantastic Northern Irish actors reading all of these. They're all set in a caravan park. They're all linked. You meet 10 different owners of caravans as you go through, and I'm going to read the first 2 paragraphs of Anna's story. Pointless has just started when somebody hits the caravan door a wild clatter. Who's that? Snaps Mummy. I want to say, how should I know? What I actually say is, I just go and see. I'm 47, but I still wouldn't dare give her lip. Mummy gives me a right pissy look. She hates being disturbed during Pointless. She used to time the dinner around it. We'd sit on the sofa eating off trays while she shouted her answers at the screen. If I sat too close, I'd get shard and mashed potato. Too far away, and I couldn't reach to feed her. Mummy doesn't eat dinner anymore. She's had no appetite since she died. She doesn't stop her watching Pointless, though, or insisting I have my dinner while it's on. It's only 5 o'clock. Nobody wants their dinner at 5. On the continent, they're just rising from lunch. Not that I've ever been to the continent. Mummy didn't approve of it. We always took our holidays in Ayr. She liked Ayr. It was just as bleak as Ballycastle, but they'd a sea you could look at through the rain. Now she's gone. There's nothing keeping me from the continent. Only she's not really gone, is she? She's still here, following me round the bungalow, nagging, dragging me to church, demanding we head down to the caravan every weekend. Nothing's changed. Nothing's ever going to change. Nobody else can see Mummy, but I can, and she's doing my head in. I set my tray aside, across the caravan to the door. Maggie waddles behind me, winding her fat body round my slippers. She's not as fast as she once was, though she still manages to trip me up 2 or 3 times a day. That wee dog has a murderous streak in her. She's made it abundantly clear I'm no substitute for Mummy. She's called after Maggie Thatcher. Mummy was a big fan of the Iron Lady. She had the hair done like her and all. The dog takes after her namesake. She won't do anything she doesn't want to. Dying being the first thing that comes to mind. Maggie's 19 now. Human years, not dog ones. That's ancient for a Yorkie. I'm starting to wonder if she might be immortal too. If it wasn't for Maggie, I wouldn't be tied to Seacliff. I could go anywhere I wanted. Spain, Portugal, even the States. I have a cousin out there in Kentucky. I could finally be shut of Mummy. But I can't leave. I promised her I'd take care of Maggie. I thought she'd go soon after Mummy. But here we are, 3 years later, 2 bitter old bitches in a caravan, pandering to a dead woman's every whim. I leave it there. I can read it in a Ballymena accent slightly, but the woman who narrates it in Radio 4 does a much better job of me. We're actually, the time's going really quickly. I wanted to talk to you about actual writing practice in COVID. We've got a wee snapshot of the different things that everybody's been working on there. I found that for some reason, lockdown actually changed the way I was writing. So you can hear it in that piece. All I wrote were monologues. I think I must have written 24 monologues across the year, all in first person. And I've said this, and I'd mean it in the nicest way. This is a collection of 10 versions of me. If you read it, you will hear elderly Jan, 11-year-old child Jan, thwarted 27-year-old rock musician Jan. I couldn't get out of my own head, so I just kept writing myself over and over again. Did you two have any other strange things that actually happened to your writing, how it changed? Saeida, anything that you found?
The only thing that kind of stands out to me is that I started thinking more carefully about what it was that I was trying to say, like what was the subtext to what I was writing and what was the kind of underlying purpose of it. And I found I kind of thought that, like, questioned that a lot more than I normally would. Like normally I would just sit down and write, and I don't really have a structure or a plan, or I just like to kind of just get it out like so many people and just get that first draft and then accept that it's probably kind of not very good, but that's fine. I can make it better in second. Whereas this one, I think like during lockdown, I just started thinking more deeply about, well, what's the like kind of emotional journey of this character? I just found myself asking that a lot more. Where do they start on this, and where does their emotional journey end? Yeah. And I don't know if there's some kind of lockdown reason for it, but it was certainly something that sat behind what I was writing, as opposed to just kind of free for all, see what happens and see what ends up on the page and then work with that. So I think just the kind of mental process.
Do you think it's just having more time? Because I find the same thing. Like, I'm a magical realist, but I've never really thought about why I'm a magical realist. And I spent the year reading up on like the other writers in the tradition and critical theory on it. And maybe it's just time, having more time to think.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, sometimes when you're kind of juggling so many things, family, whatever it is, you just kind of got to get it done, right? And you're like, I've just got 2 hours today, and so I just need to do it. But yeah, maybe having more time on my hands has allowed me to kind of think it through a bit more carefully. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, because then you might just, there's been times where I've just got stuck, right? I've just been like, now I don't even know what the purpose of this is. There is no purpose. And it's not kind of, you know, freeing yourself up from that kind of interrogation is also quite important as well.
Yeah. Jared, what about you? Any actual changes in your writing style?
I don't know if it was, I mean, I don't know if it's because of, I'm very contrarian. So obviously I'm going to be very contrarian with the last thing I finished, and, you know, like kind of change of form. And I think like the, you know, kind of the novel kind of dares you not to care about these characters and their kind of plight. And, you know, it is kind of, and I think that with the bits that I'm writing now, I'm always kind of the reverse, is like, I'm making it very easy for you not to care about these very, very quiet moments. But I want to still, my task is, even without kind of like, you know, the kind of big moments of kind of real kind of distress or kind of like crisis in a character, can I still make writing as engaging, as beautiful in these quiet moments where you are kind of just sitting there? And I don't know if that's because of, for me, the last 4 years from like 2016 to 2020 are like it's just kind of a continuum to the inevitable. And so COVID, because like, yeah, of course, COVID is going to be 2020. I mean, after 2016 and like chaos and just like this just horrible march towards more and more kind of ugliness, and and it hasn't stopped. And then COVID kind of taught us that like not even a pandemic will treat, you know, I mean, what's going on right now in other parts of the world? There's literally a war going on, you know, and just like, yeah. And then, you know, you just, the kind of body count, nobody cared. Nobody cares, you know, and I'm American. So you see this in the States and you just see like, wow, that didn't even stop. They're still doing the same nonsense. And so maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it's kids. I don't know if it's the politics. I don't know if it's kind of the kind of thing around this ugliness of, or it facilitates the politics. I don't know which comes first, the chicken or egg, but it's definitely an ugly creature. And I think that's why I am probably looking at more just kind of nuance, and how can I just do it with just language alone, rather than kind of, and I think maybe that's a combination of things, but that's definitely where my writing is going, is to kind of, okay, I've achieved this. Can I now kind of make it harder for me to do that? And that's just the way I work as a writer. I don't know why, but like, that's it. It's like, how can I make my life harder and me more miserable? Oh yes, I know, I'll make it difficult again. So, but it seems to work. So, I mean, it's misery for my family, but like, for the page, it's okay. Oh, sorry.
I do recognize that sentiment. Like, what is the most tricky thing that you could possibly do next that's going to constrain you to the point that you're forced into creativity? I did have a wasted attempt at writing one of the stories in the Caravan book from the perspective of the water cycle. Folks, never ever try that. It is impossible to write in the voice of the water cycle. Eventually my producer was just like, I think maybe this is one you need to give up on, Jan. That was really like one of my constraints I did to myself. Jared, you mentioned just what a kind of dumpster fire of a year it's been across the board. Like, it's not just COVID. This panel is called Writing in the Time of COVID, but it could easily just be called Writing in the Time of 2020. What the hell was that? And as writers, I don't know if you're the same as me, but I have been asked to write lots of think pieces and articles, and I'm constantly being interrogated about how my work speaks to what's going on in the world. What's our responsibility? You know, is our responsibility just to keep telling stories? Or, you know, I'm a Northern Irish writer. The minute I open my mouth, I have political responsibility thrown at me. Saeida, what do you think? Like,
I mean, responsibility always feels like a scary word for me generally. I kind of flee from responsibility in whatever shape it comes in. So it's I don't know. I think like, I feel like I have a responsibility, but I don't know if that's as a writer, but certainly as a kind of human being living in this world with COVID and all, you know, kind of the Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on at the moment, and so many things. Certainly feel like I have a responsibility, and I think in the writing that, I suppose for me, it's always about the impact. Where is power in my writing? Like, it's always my responsibility in my writing is, what am I doing with power in the story? Like, where is power, and what is that doing to the characters, but what is that saying about the world? And so like in my novel, there are kind of quite a few victims of this man who it's based on a true story, and it was really about, well, where's the power, where's their voice in this story, and trying to kind of navigate it in a way that I understand why this person is in this position, and what the message is of that. And I guess that's where I feel there's a responsibility to interrogate those dynamics in my story, in the storytelling process, and make sure that kind of feels right, or it's purposeful. And that's, I would say, that's where it kind of lands for me.
I suppose it's interesting, like as a novelist or a storyteller, you get to be kind of god of the little world that you've created, and you get to decide what the power structures and things look like in that world, and to redress some of the imbalances, I guess.
And I think it's easy to replicate problematic power dynamics if you don't interrogate them in your writing, you could easily just replicate them. And so I think there's a responsibility to interrogate what you've written a bit, and to see where that is, and whether or not you've done enough work on that.
I want to go away and think about that for a wee bit longer. I haven't thought about that before. That's what's going to keep me up tonight. Jared, are you responsible for writing the world to a better place?
I mean, I think I am, in the sense that what the stories that have always attracted me. I mean, I was a reader long before I was a writer, and the stories I wanted to read were the ones that weren't being told, or the ones that were hard to find, and the ones that kind of question the kind of dominant narrative, which it tends to just be kind of the consensus and kind of keeping that status quo. And so as a writer, that's what I do. And like Coward is a great example of that. It's just like, I saw people were not, accurately portraying disability and the stories and addiction. I was like, that's not how it is at all. Like there's a real story to be told. So I think in that regard, that's that kind of that Baldwinian millimeter. If I can move the world that millimeter, then I've done my job. And I think at the end of the day, that's where my responsibility as an author ends. I don't really think you should be asking me about politics. What the hell do I know about politics? Like, I'm like every other jackass on Twitter. I got an opinion, but and I think that kind of comes to like, that's my position as an author, as a man, as a person. I see myself as, everyone thinks they're the good guys. You look on Twitter and everyone's very sure that they're the right. And then the guys in the red hats think they are definitely like saving the democracy. And I'm just like, I'm not interested in being a good guy at all. What I'm interested in is being a better man. I'm better than I was before. And that is like a project, and it's nothing you can tweet about. And it's just like, how am I being better today than I was yesterday, to people I love, to strangers I don't know, and that's kind of my goal. That's what that's it's modest. It's definitely not going to change the world, but I can definitely sleep better at night, that kind of thing. So
yeah, I like that because it is modest and it's achievable. Like I'm a massive George Saunders fan, and I love that Saunders talks a lot about approaching writing and approaching people with kindness. There's a kindness inherent in how he writes, even about the worst things that people do to each other. And I think, it's a very simple thing. You can do that in your writing, write about people with humanity and dignity and optimism even sometimes.
Yeah. And that's it. You do the work. And, this whole debate about whether you can write kind of beyond your own experience, and if you can write others, as it were. And I think you totally can, but you better well do it well. It's just going to be that much harder, but you should. And that to me is like the end of the debate, not any kind of like, kind of horrible stuff that gets put out about this subject, and it's just like, it's just, you can write what you want, but you have a responsibility to do it well. And that's all that matters. And again, just bring the humanity and the generosity. that same generosity that you would expect, give it to the characters, and that works on the page for the reader. Like they'll be like, oh, this is a real human being. This isn't, a mouthpiece for the author or an agenda for polemic. And and I think that does work. And I'm exactly in the kind of Saunders boat. That's the fiction that works for me as a reader, and that's the stuff I want to make as a writer.
We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to slide into the questions, which are actually flooding in from, like, normally this is the point where I pretend there's lots of questions in the chat room, but there honestly are, folks, quite a few questions here. So if we can try and keep them quite sharpish, and we'll try and get through everybody's question, because I have a blind order question I want to ask you before I let you go tonight. Our first question is from Renata. Did any of you read picture books or books from your childhood during lockdown? No.
I have kids, so yeah. and I've loved reading them. I've been reading them in French, and it's right at my level.
Yeah.
But I can really get into it, and I really enjoy it. But the Giving Tree, I have a Giving Tree. The Shel Silverstein, The Giving Tree, which is mine from when I was a child, and has a Polaroid picture of me as like a 4-year-old, and reading that to the kids, and the kids love to like look at me. And then like The Giving Tree is like this just beautiful book about parenting, and they love, and it's just beautiful. The lines are great, and so definitely. And I think children's books are amazing when they're good. They're like a short story. They're just crisp and sharp. But there's so many bad ones. I'm just like, sometimes my children's stories disappear. And I am not reading that one again. I am not reading 12 Days of Christmas again. God, I'm going to go insane. So,
yeah, I totally know. I've got a niece and nephew, and they're always like, read this awful thing. And I'm like, no, let's read The Tiger Who Came to Tea. It's really good. I didn't read any books from my childhood in a normal childhood sense, but as I started reading Agatha Christie when I was 8, was the influence of a very bad librarian who took me into the crime fiction section at 8. So I guess I was rereading my childhood books and reading all of the Christie. Andy,
I read Dune. That's a childhood book, like, well, teenage, and that was childhood. And that was again a comfort read, and that was great. Yeah.
So this question is define childhood literature. If you were reading like, and then there were none when you were 8, then that's childhood literature. Now we've got a question from Simon. Have you found the negativity on the news over the last year has affected your writing? And we kind of touched on that a little bit.
It's affected my mental state, which affects my writing. So definitely. Yeah. I'm really trying to avoid it these days. I find I'm like a smoker with the phone. When I feel anxious, I pick up my phone now instead of smoking. I just pick this up, and it's not a good habit. I'd like to break that habit. Yeah. Very soon.
Saeida, news, how's it affected you?
Yeah, I've kind of tried, like, I took myself off Twitter, for example, a while ago, just because of how toxic it can get. And yeah, I think it's just like, it's affected my, like the extent of my concentration for sure. And absolutely, I kind of had to shield myself from some of it, just because it does affect your mental state, and then that does affect your writing or your capacity. So, yeah.
I've had a funny relationship with it, like because you can turn off Twitter, but like particularly the week of the riots here in Belfast, like there was a police helicopter over my house for like 2 weeks. So the news is right in front of you. There was a bunch of men in balaclavas at the end of my street. So and in a way that,
in the 21st century, like what's going on, guys? Like,
know,
oh man,
I know. But in a way it informs what you're writing about, but it also feels like even that metaphor of the helicopter, I find it's a great metaphor for the news, because it feels so oppressive. It's constantly hanging over you with low level hum kind of thing.
Yeah.
Aggie has a question. This is a good one. We should have touched on this if I had kept to my notes and we didn't get to it. Do you have any tips for keeping motivated with your writing during challenging times like this? Any tips for other writers?
Modulate your expectations. Just a scribble. Give yourself a break. Like, the book stuff can wait. Like, live your life, and just, if you find it a comfort, and that's it. I find it a comfort to kind of release things. So like I write, and when I realize that not all of it has to be any good, that's great. Just go back to when you were a kid and you would just write and just do that. And don't put all this stress about it's going to get published. And this is what's going to get you an agent or a publishing deal or a movie deal or whatever. Just remember the joy of writing. That's why I love teaching, is because I go, oh yeah, that's the thing I loved. Just making nonsense up, and it's beautiful. So that would be mine. And just get the pressure off yourself and just enjoy it, or don't. Write whatever the hell you want, like, and just give yourself, just relax. It's nobody. Yeah, this isn't real. This is just do it. Yeah, just write. Yeah, that's my only motivation. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the same. It's just kind of like, be kind to yourself. Do it when you feel to do it, and when you don't beat yourself up about it.
Don't.
Write for yourself. Do it for yourself.
And I think it's a real sign of, because I saw like there's a poet, English poet, Jack Underwood, who just said, like, I think he said something like, I haven't written a poem in 6 months. And just there you go. Like, you have permission. Jack is one of the most incredible poets I know. He's just wonderful, a great human being. And he knows that doesn't matter. Just, it's fine. It'll come. It's in there. It's in you. Just relax. Just be good. And that's my motivation, is to chill out.
I think that for me, one of the things that really helped, and it's sort of bouncing off what Saeida said earlier, was realizing that a lot of writing doesn't happen at the keyboard or on your notebook. It happens up here. And I find really, the more I've done this, like for me, a novel might be in my head for up to a year before you even sit down to start taking notes on it.
Yeah.
This period has felt quite fruitful for that, in terms of I've done a lot more walking than usual, a lot more kind of solitude, and counting that as work. It doesn't always feel like work, but it's actually, you're laying really important groundwork for when you do pick up your pen or your computer again. So yeah, I feel like, I've been thinking a lot about the next thing, and when I come to it, I'll not be coming to it in the same unprepared state that I usually would be. We have one more question. This is perfect timing, guys. It's almost like we prepared this. It's a question from Simon, and it's actually, Simon, I had written this down as one of my questions to ask as well, so we're on the same page. Are there any habits that you've adopted over the last year that you're going to keep, you think are good habits? And the reverse of that, anything that you're looking forward to completely getting rid of?
I would say the exercise and the walking and getting around, and that's kind of the motivation of where we've moved. Like, Marseille is a very compact city, so 10-minute bus ride, and we're in this kind of gorgeous, like, pine covered hills. And that brings me back to like my childhood and kind of being in the wilderness of the kind of, and that's been great stuff. And I just can't wait for, me and my wife will just take walks into wilderness, and being in the sea. The sea really changed everything for me. So like, just more staring at the sea, which I picked up, and which it comes from my childhood of like just spending hours staring at the sea. That's work. And the bad habit is definitely like the anxiety, like messing with the phone, looking up Google News, checking the kind of the graphs to see whether like death is on the rise. That's not good for you. And if you do that, if you have that, kind of poisonous dose over and over 18-month period, is not good for you. And yeah, I just can't. It does feel like an addiction. It's such a boring, tedious addiction. They're not gonna make any Velvet Underground songs about, that's for sure. So
yeah, I think for me, walking is something that I would like to keep, and I think just that process of clearing my head. So I lived near Epping Forest, and so I would go for those kind of long walks through the forest, and that really helped clear my head and just prepare me for whatever I was going to work on that day. And I think I I don't think I really fully appreciated how useful it is to just kind of walk your head clear. You know, you walk into it's just, you've processed every thought you're having, and it's kind of a little bit empty, and you can go back and kind of reset a little bit. So I'd like to kind of keep that up, I think so. And in terms of bad habits, I'm sure I've developed loads, but it is that kind of shrinking of my like capacity to concentrate. I kind of need, like just finding ways to you know, be able to concentrate for longer periods of time, to really get involved in the writing moment and just lose that sense of time. Whereas I think, like you, Jared, I'm kind of like finding myself picking up my phone when I'm working and then picking it up again 15 minutes later. And, you know, and I get the alert at the end of the week of how much time I've spent on my phone. And I just feel,
that's horrible.
I feel sick. And that's really kind of
impacting. They are made to make you anxious, because that's how they get you to interact with it. Like, yeah. And just to add one more good habit is I've made it a habit of, in the evenings, calling family. And I've been calling like extended family. I have this huge family in America, and just kind of calling random aunties. And it's been wonderful because they've been home. I know that they'll be home. And I just hope that doesn't end, because I just have really enjoyed just kind of talking to your blood, in a very that's a very kind of Southern American way of saying it, but my blood, this is my blood, and talking to them, and I love that, and I've really enjoyed that, talking to the family, like extended cousins, just randomly, like, what's up, and just chatting. And that's been just, I have to say, it's been one of the best things out of this year, of like, just that this is what I'm going to do, especially because they can see the kids and stuff, and where it was before, it would just be the grandparents and the great grandparents, and then it's been good.
I'm going to hold on to my ability to cut my own fringe, and I will not be paying somebody to do this ever again, because look at this is a thing of beauty that I did with a pair of nail scissors.
It's a great
so I will be holding on to that. And my other thing that I put in place was an hour of reading in the afternoon, which is absolutely sacrosanct. And I move to my sofa, and I have a big cup of tea and a big cuddly blanket, and I read for pleasure for an hour, not for work.
Oh, that's not
that as well. Everything else I can easily give up. We are almost out of time, but I wanted to leave us on a slightly up note. So I'm going to give you a little second to think about this while I do the thanks. But I want you to just answer, if you can, like in a really short sentence or so, what gives you hope at the minute? So we're leaving people with a little bit of upwards. As a writer, what gives you hope? We've talked about some really difficult things tonight. Jared.
So to give me hope, I have to say, so I'm on like a writing group with some of my like former kind of students, you could call them, and they're all a generation younger than me. And the people I taught with First Story, which is like secondary kids, and they're just great. Like that, I think that's what gives me hope, is they just are just much more sensitive and understanding and empathetic, and they just really want to do good. And I think it's like me, as like the older generation, is how do I enable that and just stand out of their way and let them sort all the problems that the previous generations, including mine, has created. And I think, and that's what gives me hope. I have to say, I'm just constantly impressed and amazed by the people that I deal with that are 10, 20 years younger than me. Lost in admiration, and just and they have great reading lists, so they always are great for like reading recommendations, so they're good.
That's a good one. Saeida, what gives you hope?
I think just general human resilience. I think that we are a lot more resilient than we think we are, and I think that's, for me, that's been like personally, and people around me, and society, it's just been really kind of reassuring to know that we are resilient, and that we have the kind of capacity to kind of withstand more than maybe we realized before. And I think that's kind of given me like hope for the future, and also just our capacity to to kind of just survive and make do, like when everything is suddenly shrunk, when the world just shrinks, and just our ability to just kind of like find ways of surviving that, even though of course it's been very hard for a lot of people. I do find it inspiring that we've managed to kind of just give up the stuff but a lot of the material stuff that just doesn't matter. Like it's
great. Yeah, it's a good one.
And just finding meaning in the small things that we have, or the things that we maybe didn't fully appreciate. That gives me hope that we might, that keep some value of the stuff that we value now, and not the rubbish stuff that just like we live without.
Yeah, absolutely. It's showing you like what you don't need. Like, I guess mine's on a similar theme. I think that one of the big takeaways from the last year is, particularly in the writing community of other writers, realizing that the community is stronger than I thought it was. Like friendships and connections that I thought were kind of colleague type acquaintances things, actually over the last 18 months transpired to be much deeper and much realer and much more generous than I kind of anticipated. So it's made me really thankful to be in this kind of community. I don't know if I was in the political community, if I would be feeling so kind of confident about the support that you get from around you, or the kind of people that you're surrounded by. But I'm very, very hopeful about the writers community and what they've been writing about during the pandemic, and what's going to emerge in the next wee while gives me a lot of hope. It has been a very quick hour. It's gone incredibly fast. Left us with a lot to think about. I probably won't sleep tonight thinking about some of these things now. But I want to say a huge thank you to Jared McGinnis and Saeida Rouass for joining me tonight, and to Wigtown for facilitating this. Next time the three of us to get together, there will be wine and cake on the table. I absolutely guarantee it in real life. I also want to thank Kenny, who is behind the scenes making us all look glamorous and wonderful all of the time, and Andy, who's been helping me with the questions and fire them across to me. So big thanks to them, and to iLift for putting it all together. All of our books are available from the Festival Bookshop, and as if by magic, Kenny is going to pop up the links for you, so you can just all order all our books straight away, which will keep us writers really happy. And please join us for other events across the weekend. We're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you for spending the last hour with us.